Hello to everyone jumping on. We'll get started in a little bit, but in the meantime, if you want to put your answer in the chat, where you're from, what your name is, and what your go-to karaoke song is, because we could all use a little music in our lives right now. But we will get started in a second. I think what would be even better though is as the songs are coming up, for each one of us to take like one of the lyrics and start singing it.
Bailey, you promised us beforehand you weren't gonna make us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What happened to that?
No singing. Yeah. This is a empowerment webinar. This is not a musical performance.
Although we do have some very artistic, talented people on here, though, so I wouldn't put it past them.
Not musically talented, not at all.
Oh my gosh.
I can hum.
Winnie says, I knit. Copycat by Billie Eilish. That's a good one. I literally will say these out loud, so if you're putting them in the chat, definitely do so.
Ooh.
Good one.
Living on a Prayer.
Oh my gosh.
I want it that way. That's a good one. That's a popular, Hannah from Vancouver. That's a popular, I think, karaoke song for sure. You'll get other people singing with you at the karaoke machine. Yeah, definitely keep them coming. Don't be afraid to put them in the chat. I won't call everyone out, but where's the love? That's a good one too. Well, all of these are good. Anyone?
Ooh, this is when you tell me when we're gonna break them up in breakout rooms by these songs.
Yeah, so thank you all.
They're gonna have to come back and perform as a group.
Hopping on, yeah.
Yeah.
This is not what you think it is. This is really a singing experience. What's going to be funny though is to see how many people are like their karaoke song is the same, because I feel like there's just some songs that no one will tackle in karaoke form. They're like, no, and that's why we all kind of like say the same things, I guess, maybe.
Oh, that's a good one.
Some good representation from Ohio on as well. It's great to see you guys all on here.
Oh yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, I won't keep us any longer. I love looking at these. Keep putting them in the chat. Maybe we'll sing at the end. Who knows? No, I'm just kidding. But let's get started. More people will be hopping on, obviously, but definitely wanting to get started. So thank you to everyone who is on right now and to all of the people who are still trying to navigate Zoom. I hope we see you along the way. For those who weren't on the last webinar, my name is Bailey Ritter. I'm from Pontiac, Illinois. I'm the youth coordinator for the Ocean Project, and my go-to karaoke song is Islands in the Stream by Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers. And if you have not heard that song, I would just suggest looking it up ASAP. Like, it's one of the best songs. Co-hosting this really special webinar with me is a good friend of mine, Sean Russell. He'll introduce himself. We're really just the MCs of this really awesome opportunity to chat with everybody and have a discussion about storytelling, which is, one of my favorite pieces of being a young activist, is kind of the storytelling piece, telling where I come from and telling other people's stories. It's super powerful, and I'm just so excited to be able to talk with 4 just insanely cool storytellers, which you can see. They'll talk a little bit more about themselves, but I did want to introduce Sean, who will be my co-hosting pal during this entire beautiful journey we're going on.
Sounds good. Thanks, Bailey. And again, I can't think of a better group of people to have on this call with us today. But again, my name is Sean Russell, and I'm the Associate Director of Youth Engagement and Partnerships at EarthEcho International. And as you can see, we're taking votes for the karaoke song, so feel free to add that to the conversation and discussion. But thrilled to team up with Bailey and help guide this conversation tonight. And just to kick us off, we're thrilled to partner with the Ocean Project, our team at EarthEcho International, and help bring this conversation to you this evening. Just a little bit of background on who we are. EarthEcho International is an environmental education nonprofit that was founded about 15 years ago by Philippe and Alexandre Cousteau in honor of their father, Philippe Cousteau Sr., and grandfather, ocean explorer Jacques Cousteau. And our work is really built on a fascinating legacy of storytelling around ocean health and waterway conservation. For so many, Jacques Cousteau, through filmmaking and storytelling, helped introduce the world and really a generation to life kind of under the ocean for the first time. And at EarthEcho, we're thrilled to carry on that legacy with a specific focus and mission on inspiring young people to act now for a sustainable future and equipping young people with the tools to take action in their communities. And storytelling is, of course, a big part of that. Bailey, you can flip to the next slide. I encourage you all just to take a minute and, if you have time, maybe.
There we go.
There we go. To check out our programs at EarthEcho and check out some of the tools related to conservation that we offer to young change makers around the world. And specifically want to call out the EarthEcho Youth Leadership Council. We've got two of our members on joining you today to talk about how they tell stories. And want to give a quick plug for our Youth Leadership Council, which applications are open through Friday if you'd like to join Akila Jackson in serving on that group that really helps guide and shape all of our work from a youth perspective around the world. But with that, you'll get to hear more from Akila Jackson, obviously the rest of our panel, as we dive into things, but thrilled to be here to host this conversation with you guys.
That's so awesome. So without further ado, I think Sean is going to be introducing this special human. She's one of the best writers and storytellers that I know. I'm giving too much away. I'm probably saying Sean's introduction.
I would just echo all of that, but so excited to have Akila on today. As I mentioned, Akila is one of our EarthEcho Youth Leadership Council members, and again, just an incredible activist and storyteller, and has just an amazing ability to use her creative writing and poetry to tell stories and connect people on a really emotional level when it comes to the environment and conservation and motivating behavior change. So thrilled to have Akila kick things off and share a little bit about her work and story.
Thank you for that very generous introduction. So hi friends, I hope you're all keeping safe and rejoicing in things that are making you happy right now. It's needed more than ever. So like both Bailey and Sean said, I'm Akila, and I wanted to start off this introduction by sharing a poem I've been thinking about a lot during quarantine that I wrote last summer. So it's called How Fear Was Invented. Remarkably, giant squid have eyes as big as frisbees, and predictably the body runs to its mother when afraid. Can we blame it? The world holds terrifying stories in its bones, and we rip its skin apart like wild dogs to excavate our origins. Our bodies, however, resist instruction. In the dark, when we are only bodies, we forget all we have learned, and all we want is warmth and a hand to hold on to. And I hope you're all finding warmth right now during this really scary time. I've spent a lot of quarantine reflecting on the last 18 years of my life and thinking about what I want from the future. So to give you all a little bit more insight into who I am, I pulled up a baby photo, which is in the top left corner. So I've always loved nature, mostly because of my dad. He's an immigrant from a small village in southern India, and he grew up on farms. And although I've only visited once, I relished in the small gardens I had growing up and our big garden right now. And I was also a very shy kid growing up. However, that all slowly started to change once I found poetry. I like to tell people that I learned the world through poetry and storytelling. I think I drifted towards poetry because I grew up on my mother's stories, and so it just felt natural to start telling my own. And it felt, so when I stumbled upon From the Bow Seat, which is an art and writing competition focused on ocean conservation in my freshman year of high school, I was beyond thrilled to start writing poetry and think about my relationship to nature, specifically the ocean, which is something I didn't have a lot of access to, and I still don't have a lot of access to living in Arizona. And from there, I haven't stopped thinking about my connection to the planet and to the people in it. And I've tried to do as much as I could to keep learning and giving. So I wanted to highlight a few moments I'm proud of still the last slide. Yeah, from my last few years of work. So I joined my local environmental justice group, Arizona Youth Climate Coalition, and I performed a poem at our first climate strike. I served as an EarthEcho Water Challenge Ambassador and brought my water testing kit to a writing camp, hence the picture on the bottom right corner. That's my friend holding up one of the tests we did. And I also started Phoenix's Youth Poet Laureate program with a friend to amplify the voice of another young Phoenix poet. And I served on the 2019 Sea Youth Rise Up delegation and found such a bright and lovely community of conservationists. And lastly, I created a story map of my community so we could all feel more connected to each other. And that's a little bit about me and what I'm most proud of. I didn't want to come off too resume-ish, but yeah, that's a little bit about me. And I wanted to address this really quickly, but a lot of people ask me why poetry, and I always respond with a quote from Megan Atencia, who is one of my favorite local poets, which is, poetry can't save the world, but poetry can save people, and people can save the world. I think poetry and story sharing needs to be considered as integral to the environmental justice movement, because if we don't have the stories of each other, we won't have a diverse range of responses to combat climate change, which is what we need. And lastly, to end my introduction and hand it off to the wonderful people after me, I wanted to say that I know it's intimidating to ask questions on webinars, at least for me it is. I wanted to say you are free to ask me anything about anything I just mentioned, and I can also speak on anything from college applications to octopuses to sustainable fashion brands, so please feel free. And then lastly, I wanted to leave you with some resources. So before I jump in, I wanted to quickly explain what the squares mean. So these are QR codes, and if you open up your phone camera and scan the QR code, it will take you directly to the site. So the first QR code is about prompts. So one of my closest friends is a former national student poet of the Southwest, and she and a few other national student poets compiled a great collection of poetry prompts and reading recommendations. So definitely, if you're trying to get into poetry, that's a great resource. And if prompts feel really stuffy for you right now and a little bit restrictive, one of my favorite ways to brainstorm is by starting with a familiar story, either a family story that's been passed down to you or just an important memory, and seeing where that takes you on the page. And then the second resource I included is another thing that I think is super important to boost creativity and continue giving is by joining a supportive community. So you learn perspective, and that's one of my favorite aspects of poetry. So in this QR code, I linked the application to the EarthEcho Youth Leadership Council and Water Challenge Ambassador Program, both of which have been incredibly supportive and impactful communities to me. Like I mentioned before, I brought my water testing kit to writing camp, and I didn't mention this last slide, but I spent the rest of the camp including water bodies in almost every poem I wrote, so it really made an impact on me. And lastly, the last QR code is if you're feeling a little bit stuck and not that hopeful right now, I recommend checking out From the Bow Seats incredible collection of student artwork. If you find yourself inspired enough to do some art afterwards, I definitely recommend submitting to their annual art competition. The deadline is June 15th, and it gave me a lot of confidence, so I definitely recommend checking it out. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to the next panelist. Thank you.
Yay, that was so good. I forgot to mention, by the way, so a large chunk of this webinar will be open to Q&A. So we really want to give all of you the chance to ask the panelists, what are your questions about storytelling? You know, how did they get started? Really ask anything. So start putting those in the Q&A now, and we'll be able to answer a large chunk of questions later, which is just going to be really cool because we could all use some cool community discussion at this point. I'm really excited to announce the next panelist. She is one of the most inspiring, just bubbly humans I've ever met. She is a World Oceans Day Youth Advisory Council member, an Ocean Youth Ambassador for the Sea Life Trust, as well as a founder of the Sea Change Network. She's great. This is an early morning for her, so give her lots of love in the chat. But without further ado, Nicola.
Thank you so much. And Akila, that was so inspiring. So thank you as well. I guess I'll begin by introducing myself. I'm Nicola Chollis. I'm 18. I live in semi-rural bushland in Victoria. Although I'm not actually that far away from the city, my friends say I live in the sticks. I'm currently in my first year of university. It was amazing for the first week until we had to go back home. But at the moment I'm studying environmental science and will soon be transferring into marine science, which has been my lifelong ambition. Yeah, so my hobbies consist of photography. I like making films, being in the ocean, painting, and I try to surf. Like Bailey said, I am an alumni of Sea Life Melbourne Aquarium's Ocean Youth Program for 2019, and I'm so gratefully a member of the World Oceans Day Youth Advisory Council with Bailey as our awesome mentor. As well as holding a few other leadership roles in my community and high school. So basically, my introduction to the ocean began at toddler age. My parents are split up, but when I was very young. However, to me, this allowed me to see life in different perspectives, different views. So when I was about 6 or 7, I was on a dad and daughter trip to an incredibly beautiful tropical island off the coast of Queensland, close to the Great Barrier Reef, called Brampton Island. The reason this is such an important story for me to express is because I found something so beautiful and so breathtaking. This memory has opened up my eyes for a life of dedication to what I love. I had these yellow flippers and snorkels, and I remember being in 1 foot of water and looking for literally anything that moved, and I saw this incredibly vibrant orange-green sea turtle, and I remember running in and diving into the water just to get a closer look. And since that experience, I've wanted to be a marine biologist, so it's pretty crazy. So this story really begins when I first got my camera as a Christmas present from my dad about 7 or 8 years ago, which is still the camera and the lens and everything I use today. Surprisingly, she's like my baby. But I found that I had to look in and put myself out there to understand what I was going to do with this new tool and why I was actually doing it. I took my camera everywhere, school field trips, holidays, trying to capture each photograph with a new perspective. And I found my biggest growth of learning was that in nature. I shared these photos with my family, my friends. I did a lot of photography and film work for school, and I made my own platform on Instagram. The reason I take photos is to connect and allow people to see things with broadened perspectives. It might not be the same view I had when I was taking the photo, but I hope that they allow others to interpret it in their own way, which I believe is super important in how storytellers and advocates for the environment and change introduce this way of caring for our planet. Because if you see beauty in something, you begin to wonder about it, and wonder sparks the eagerness to learn, and it's almost the basis of caring for that something. The way I use photos for my advocacy is by allowing people to connect with how beautiful nature is through my photos. I'm sharing how beautiful my world is in the aim of opening others' perspectives and shedding light and opening their eyes to how beautiful the world around them is. I strongly feel engaged to representing the surf culture and bringing the light to how incredible life is down there by the coast, and why it's so important to fight for what you love. And like we recently saw down here in Australia, I'm not sure if many of you know, but a giant company called Equinor in Norway did recently pull out of a mass destructive drilling proposition in the Great Australian Bight. And it just goes to show that people power is everything, the paddle outs, and showcasing just how incredible and important the ocean, the coast, the marine life and nature is to not only the people of the community, but to the community as a whole. And I feel so honoured to represent that from afar and watch and observe these people that are so intertwined with their environment. So I guess I'd love to end on the note with my favourite photograph. I think it's on the next slide. Yeah, just the one in the top the top right corner with the cliffside and the ocean. And this is along the Great Ocean Road in Victoria. And I'm asking you to express how this photo makes you feel. So yeah, thank you.
All types of way. Like I can't even. I'll put my answer in the chat. I'll put my answer.
That's it. Yeah, type it in below.
Type in the chat. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I wish, I know some people say like, oh, it's just an iPhone. You can just do it with an iPhone. I think you so have to have an eye for it. So I love looking at your artwork. Definitely give her photography channel a follow. I'll link it at the very end. But I mean, give everyone a follow because all of the people on here are crazy cool on social media as well. Next is for Sean.
I'm gonna pick it up. Yes, we're gonna work on this pass off. And good comments I see coming in too about how those photos are resonating with people, Nicola. It's just beautiful to see your work, and especially when we talk about the ocean and the environment, kind of places that people can't necessarily always get to in person. Especially now, those photos I think remind us why we do the work that we do and help us feel connected to those places, even when we can't get there in person. So thank you so much for sharing that as well. All right. So next up, I'm excited to introduce Jackson, who is also one of our EarthEcho International Youth Leadership Council members, and comes at this from another angle of storytelling, in that he is an incredible filmmaker. We've had the pleasure of working with Jackson and seeing just the growth of his own work as a filmmaker in his community, and the work that he does on storytelling on all different angles, but also through our own organization have the chance to benefit from that too, as he's helped us bring to life the stories of our work and partners through really fantastic video content. So I'm thrilled to have Jackson on here today. He's also, other fun fact, Jackson is also a pilot, so he can tell you all kinds of interesting stories and some interesting aerial photos and videos as well. But I want to toss it over to Jackson to share a bit more about his work and journey here.
Thank you, Sean. So yeah, I'm Jackson. I'm from Akron, Ohio. I'm on EarthEcho International's Youth Leadership Council as well. Sean also said I'm a pilot, which is true. So today I'm just going to kind of walk you through what I think one of my biggest and most successful film projects that I've ever done is I was up in British Columbia, Canada. Rewind a little bit. I'm going to talk about what sparked my interest in the environment and making films to make people realize how special it is. So next slide. This is the documentary Before the Flood. Nat Geo made it. Leonardo DiCaprio is the main actor in it, and he does an awesome job explaining the 3 stages of climate change. What happens like when the world is perfect, kind of the stage we're in right now where it's declining, and then finally after the flood, which is when all the glaciers melt and the oceans rise and everything starts to really go crazy. So watching this film, with my background in film at the time a little bit, and my passion for the mountains and being outside and nature, I realized that I could make something maybe not to that scale, but something that would be relevant to my friends and something they'd enjoy watching for a few minutes. So I started filming stuff in 8th grade. I got hurt during the football season, so I just took my mom's camera to practice and fiddled around with it a little bit and took some videos of my teammates, and they got a kick out of it. So I kept doing it, and eventually I learned about this camp up in Canada called Momentum Ski Camps. They have a program along with the ski camp. It's called Exposure. So they bring in these top-class filmmakers in the action sports industry, and you're there for a week really learning from them. You also get to shoot some of the best skiers in the world because they're there training. So I was up in Canada for that week, and I'd gone the year prior and just made a little video of skiers and nothing too serious. And then I watched Before the Flood, and I'm like, there's glaciers up in Canada. I'm on them. And this talks about glaciers as well. So prior to the camp, I reached out to this gentleman on the screen. His name is Arthur De Jong, and he's really the leader of all the environmental work at the Whistler Blackcomb Ski Resort, and really around the world. He's made a big impact on environmental advocacy and ski resort, if you understand. Yes. So I reached out to him and essentially asked if I could interview him to see what he knows about the glaciers melting and what steps they're taking to help preserve them. And he was very kind and nice enough to let me sit down with him for an hour, and I took videos of him. So I'm up in Canada, and I tell all these people, oh, I'm making this video about the glaciers melting and how the resort is trying to help them. And I actually received some pushback from some of the higher up people in the camp, because they thought I was exposing maybe the decline of the glacier, which would mean decline of the camp. And to anyone that were to maybe do something that, this could be a little risky, maybe people don't like it, I definitely encourage you to go along with it. Just don't pass the point of making people too mad. But eventually, when I showed him the video, he was very happy with it, and he was happy I didn't make it seem like the camp was going down the drain. So the main audience for this video was like 10 to 20-year-old skiers who like to hang out and watch skiing all day. And so I knew I couldn't really just hammer them with facts about climate change and how the glaciers melting. So I found this fine line between the facts on climate change and the action sports, which you can see through these screenshots. And I hope everyone will go watch the video after this. All of my contacts are linked in the end. What else do I have? So I really studied the audience and figured out how I could keep them interested and also get a point across. And I just want to make a point on receiving criticism, because if you go to the next slide, this video was voted video of the day on a like ski video YouTube type website, and it has like 15,000 views right there on there right now. And it was also on Forecast Ski magazine, which is a Canadian ski magazine. So on New Schoolers, I received quite a bit of pushback saying that I've made this video to get views and the glaciers aren't really melting. And that really brought me back a little bit, knowing that people didn't like the work. And to anyone that wants to get into any sort of art, there's people that'll definitely try to bring you down and say your work's not good. And I personally think that maybe they're just a little jealous that they didn't have the idea to make a ski video on the glaciers melting. So today I still do a little environmental filming. I work with Jim Trogdon, who's a local middle school teacher. Some of you may know the name. He's voted Science Teacher of the Year in the nation, and he's crazy. His classroom has animals all over the walls. And my uncle, C.C. Berg, we all kind of do some filming in the national parks and stuff. I also photograph concerts, and recently I've been making a bunch of short films to send to film schools to hopefully try to get in there. I'm going to leave you with two things. If you're interested in making any type of film and you have no clue where to start, the best thing you can do is get your iPhone and turn the video camera on and just start filming something. Because the longer you sit there and think, oh, how am I going to do this, the more time you're wasting. And the best way to learn is to just get out there and start doing it. And if you have this idea that you want to do something, I want to go take pictures at the Hozier concert, or I want to interview Arthur DeJong from Whistler Blackcomb. Never hesitate to email people, because from what I've learned, people are always willing to help. Finally, I'd like to ask anyone interested to apply to the Youth Leadership Council, EarthEcho, which is due Friday, I believe, Sean. Hopefully I got that right.
You did. Thanks for
Thank you
plugging
very-
it in. Thanks, Jackson,
plug.
so much for sharing your story. Fantastic work too. And I think just want to reiterate that point. I think that you stressed throughout was, as you think about your storytelling communication, really meeting your audience where they are and really thinking that through in that strategy when it comes to, communicating the issues you're passionate about, and really identifying those audience needs and figuring out how your message will connect with them too. So this is fantastic, and thanks for all your great work. I'm gonna toss it back to Bailey.
Yeah. I wish I had like a sound machine, like a clapping machine, so I could clap for everybody, since we are doing this digital. But I'm really excited to announce the last but certainly not least panelist, Laura Johnson. Amongst other things, she is a marine science educator at the Aquarium of the Pacific, a former youth program manager for Big Blue and You, as well as a research assistant for the Florida Atlantic University Dolphin Lab. Like I said, give all of these amazing panelists a follow on social media, but especially Laura, who is a digital superstar, has one of the best kind of advocacy profiles from a young person's perspective, that I have seen. She's great. I won't say any more because she's awesome. So without further ado, Laura.
Oh, thank you, Bailey. Before I get started, I do want to preface this. I've been on mute this entire time because the man who lives this way behind me in the alley makes furniture, so you may hear some power tools while I'm talking. So sorry about that. I'm basically just have a really long speech prepared for you all. I don't have anything visual to share today, but I'm just gonna read what I wrote here. So good evening, everyone. And again, thank you all so much for joining us today, and to EarthEcho and the Ocean Project, Sean and Bailey, for putting this together. Again, my name is Laura. I am 22 years old. I currently live in Long Beach, California, and I have a story to tell, as do all of us, why we're all here. I like to tell stories. I like hearing other people's stories, and I like learning about how other people exist on this planet. Every life is fascinating to me, and I care deeply about human connection and humanity. And something that relatively recently has deeply changed the world of human connection is social media. So, how many people on here right now have a social media account? I can easily assume that the overwhelming majority of the people watching this webinar have at least one social media account, if not multiple. And I can say with pretty good confidence, because again, given the context of why you might be listening to me speak right now, there's a very high chance that you are somebody who cares. So, what is storytelling under the context of social media? My co-panelists here today have near-mastered storytelling in their respective crafts. Film, poetry, and photography are instruments with which we are able to capture moments in human connections person to person, person to nature and place, and so on. Social media is a tool we can use to facilitate those connections. When we talk about climate denial, there's a fundamental lack of understanding in basic scientific principles. Therefore, I believe that education is the most effective form of activism. And you see this a lot as conservation through education. People inherently protect what they love. Social media is a great place for this kind of educational storytelling to happen. So how can you become a successful social media storyteller? We all have different blends of values and beliefs and exposure to different cultures. So how are you meant to define an entire life and an entire worldview and condense it down to a few lines of code? Ask yourself, who are you as a person? What do you have to say? And what experiences have led you to this point in your life? There are different ways to do social media, and not all of them work well for people. We can follow the algorithm or not. We can have super curated content, very issue specific or not. And we can worry about who is watching what story or not. And when it comes to talking about big name issues like climate change, plastic pollution on social media, and all of the overlapping social issues that surround them, you will encounter times where maybe not everybody agrees with you. And these are the discussions where the most growth happens. Seeing things from another person's point of view is extremely impactful in getting your message across. Introspection and self-awareness are key in realizing that compassion for others is a huge driving force behind change. And in having these difficult conversations, we can't just run around screaming, I see absolutely no explicable reasoning whatsoever for that kind of belief in the face of anybody who challenges you. We need to try to understand that every belief that a person has comes from an entirely different set of experiences than you, or anybody for that matter, and we need to think about people differently than how we think about them through a phone screen. Every voice on the internet is a person, and every person in the world has a potential to make a difference. And we need as many people on board as possible. But on the different side of the same coin, we also need to make sure we are regularly checking our mental fuel tank and seeing if these conversations are even worth having at a certain point. This is a marathon, not a race, because we cannot fight for our planet if we're fighting our own mental health every step of the way. We must have these difficult conversations, and we must step outside of our comfort zones. In plants, growth happens in light. In some species, lack of light stresses the plant, which can sometimes cause the plant to flower. Both of these examples, digging deep to get to the root of a discussion in order to make change person to person, and simply passing on the conversation because in the moment you just cannot handle it, are perfectly valid ways of having an argument. And some people are better equipped to have more difficult conversations, and that's okay. Everybody has their activist niche, and using your social media as a tool in your activism is a great way to find that niche. I hate the term social media influencer because when you really think about it, everyone is an influencer. Your behavior influences the people around you, and we sometimes forget the importance of our circle of influence. Storytelling on social media can sometimes be thought of as branding or marketing, which can definitely be factors in your success, but I like to think of it more as like hobbyist autobiographical photojournalism. Human beings are vastly complicated creatures, and yet what can also sometimes happen is a siloing of issues and ideas, and you're put into a box. Whatever it is that you care about is the type of activist that you are. Only you are able to determine what defines you, and in an age where we tend to compare ourselves to the false sense of perfection that others project onto their social media followers, it is incredibly admirable to own who you are as a person. We are so much more than what we post online, and if anybody tells you that you can't talk about something, that is their issue, not yours. My cat is going crazy right now, I'm sorry. A fact that has haunted me since I first found out about it is less than 26% of Americans hear about climate change from a friend or family member in any given month. We need to talk about it. And if we don't talk about it, becoming an eco-conscious person will never become the social norm, which is exactly what we need to have happen. I'm going to read a quote by mid-century social activist and writer James Baldwin. If I love you, I have to make you conscious of the things you do not see. We need to point out the things that we see going wrong. And we all know that the internet comment sections are a cesspool of hate and misinformation just about 80% of the time, and we need to try to bring that number down. We also need to remember that posting on social media is a great place for activism to start, but a terrible place to stop, much like recycling. Environmentalism should not be limited to environmentalists. We should be opening doors, not closing them, because we can all do better. Every single living, breathing thing on this planet has at least two things in common: our oceans and our atmosphere. To me, conservation of species has always been what I'm most passionate about. Steve Irwin taught me that. He taught me how to want to have passion and how to want to share it with others. Fighting climate change is a blend of my passion for animal conservation and one of my most important core values: leaving a place better than how you found it. We cannot be paralyzed by the magnitude of work ahead, which is undoubtedly easier said than done. But one of the most important things we can do, not just on social media, but in the real world with our friends, families, and others, is to speak up for those having difficulty being heard. The most impacted by climate change should not be allowed to bear both the burden and the fight alone. Your existence gives you a voice. Social media gives you a platform. Use it. Thank you.
Laura's TED Talk, everybody. That was,
Wow.
oh God, that was so good. I mean, all of you have just left me so inspired, but ultimately I think, talking about social media, I think it's one of the easiest tools we have, right? Like you were saying, Laura, a lot of us have social media, but it seems like one of the most intimidating. How do you find your voice? How do you find what type of content? How do you kind of balance personal posting and then your advocacy posting? So I'm really excited to get to the questions. So A, I can ask you, and B, we can see what everyone else is thinking. But thank each of you. I just want to thank each of you for sharing your passion with all of us. It's infectious. I feel it. I want to go write a poem, but also take photos and then post about it, and then ultimately make a film about all of that journey. So I hope each of you is inspired. This is the best time, though, of the webinar, when we get to, not end it, but ultimately get to those Q&A. So if you're brainstorming and you're still thinking, no worries, we have some already in there. But definitely anything that comes to mind. This is really an open and safe community to talk about the things that you want to know more about. And all of these panelists also have a range of experiences. Yes, they are storytellers and are experts in their craft, but they're also young activists and advocates who are kind of navigating this world that we live in, and feeling that powerlessness that I think a lot of us are all feeling, when our typical events don't look kind of how we envision them to look. So definitely don't be afraid to ask anything. This is a really cool time to start the conversation. So let's get going. I think I have to stop sharing my screen in order to see the questions. Sean, can you see them?
Can, yeah. So we can go ahead and jump in and get started with the first couple of questions I see coming in. And some of these are for specific people and some are for kind of the whole group here. So let's see. What about for Nicola? We have a question. What kind of specific issues or topics are you focused on most when it comes to making a difference in your country or in the world in general?
The most, that's a really, really difficult question. I honestly can't pick and choose, but I have to say, because I want to spend so much time in the ocean and really that's all I want to dedicate my life to, I'm going to have to say I want to help protect. It's such a broad thing to say, but protect, conserve, educate people. Education's probably a big thing I'm really into. On the ocean, basically. It is 70% of our world, so it's such a large portion, and I really, really, really love the ocean. So yeah.
Awesome, great to hear. Bailey, do you want to jump in with another?
I can't. I have to stop sharing my screen to see Q&A. So if you want to keep it going. The other thing too is if any of you watching have answers to these questions as well,
good point.
Put them in the chat. Like, we want to hear from each of you as well. We always try and get good book and movie recommendations as well. So if anything comes to mind that you want to share with the group, what you've been doing as well, definitely put that in the chat as we answer questions as well.
That's a great point too. And so much of this conversation is about community building, and you heard that from all of our panelists. So any way we can share resources, support each other, that's what this is all about. So I've got another question coming in here, which is I think one that almost everyone can touch on, but maybe Akila, if we can start with you. What do you think that storytelling can do that other types of advocacy can't do?
I had to unmute myself.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think that storytelling can connect people in a way that a lot of other types of advocacy can't. It's just, storytelling is just an instant connection with someone else in that they either see themselves in that story or they empathize with it. Also, I think that storytelling is very accessible to people. Sometimes all a person has is their story, and frankly, that's the most important thing you can claim. So I think that storytelling is probably my favorite way to go about advocacy, because it's just like the most basic level. If you can't connect with another person, I don't really think you are set up to do to create a change that you really want to see.
That's a great point too. And there's emotional connection. I think even just seeing your work highlighted throughout this as well, you saw that from our audience, that emotional connection it was making with all of you as well too. Anybody else want to add to that from our panel about, again, kind of how they see storytelling as something that other forms of advocacy may not be able to do?
I can. So I think specifically with film, in the news, you can hear about all these problems that are happening throughout the world. And I guess you can kind of push those to the side because all you do is read some text about it, and it's not that much of an impact on you. But if you watch a 3-minute video about, some crazy environmental thing that's happening across the world, and you hear interviews from people that are there experiencing it, it really makes it personal, I feel like. And at least for myself, when I see stuff like that, makes me want to help out and see if I can make a difference.
That's a really great answer. I know a lot of us, I'm sure watching as well, but me, Akila, we're from inland communities. And especially when it comes to ocean conservation, it's really hard to really connect, either rising sea levels or kind of the issues facing coastal communities. It's really hard to connect. It's also hard, when we're talking about issues like plastic pollution as well, to see how our kind of pollution here in inland communities does in a lot of ways make its way down to our shared ocean. So that's a really good, I love that answer.
Right, Nicole, I saw you trying to jump in there too. Go for it if you'd like.
Yeah, I would just, on both of your points, especially with Jackson, like filmmaking and photography, and it's all combined, but we're such visual creatures, and as well as listening to things that resonate with us, that deeper connection for us, it's something to connect us, not just in our community or our families or everything else, but to the world around us. And like you were saying, Bailey, like you may not be right next to the ocean, but to see and to feel what's going on outside of the world may connect you with really the whole world, and making you feel that just more inclined to, I guess, get involved, because, like in your place, this might not be happening, but around you there is a lot going on. So yeah, I just wanted to add that. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. I mean, we see that reflected just in, I love seeing people, if you haven't yet, tell us where you're tuning in from too. We see people just all over the world joining the session here today too. So it's been really exciting to see that connectivity, that shared passion for storytelling can bring. Yeah, Laura.
Mute myself.
There we go.
I just see in the chat here, Marley from New Jersey, working on her Girl Scout Gold Award. I wanted to give her a little shout out. Also, I grew up in New Jersey, and I'm also a Girl Scout Gold Award. So
yay!
Awesome. Thanks for that, Laura. And again, feel free to follow Marley's each if you guys are working on projects or campaigns. I've got a couple more questions I see that are related to that, so we'll get to those as well. But yeah, stick your contact information. If you have questions or things you're looking for resource or just want to connect, feel free to add that to the conversation in the chat as well. Laura, we might want to toss this question over to you as well too, that says, how can youth share their stories in this sometimes overwhelming and huge online community without feeling lost?
That's a really good question, and I don't have one answer for it, because that's just something that I myself deal with all the time. There sometimes are days where you feel like you're completely alone and just screaming into the void, and then there are some days where you sit on a panel with amazing people and you're able to have these kinds of connections, and it kind of tells you that your own voice is being heard a little bit. And in social media, one of the things I wanted to focus on my personal accounts is, this is my space. I get to create this space for myself. Everybody gets to create their own little part of the internet for themselves when you have social media, and what you talk about within that space is completely up to you. And when there are those days where you feel lost. That's why I say social media is a tool, because you can go out there and you can find other people who are posting similar content to what you're interested in. And it is just an amazing tool to, help pull yourself out of those kinds of bad days, I guess, if that answers the question.
Great, thanks for that, Laura. And I will say too, speaking as, and Bailey, jump in here, please, because I think speaking from the organizations that are on here kind of hosting this, any way that we can help amplify your content and tell your stories too, that's what our jobs are. So let us know, if you've got social media accounts or are working on that digital content, tag World Oceans Day, the Ocean Project, at EarthEcho. We're here to help amplify and support and highlight those stories. So please let us know how we can help do that as well.
I was going to say, actually, Sean, I have a quick question for everyone to answer as well. Just because I'm curious myself, I feel a lot of pressure when trying to be creative, if that makes sense. Like whether that's taking a photo or writing and journaling and doing a poem. I don't know. I feel like a pressure, like if it's not perfect immediately, like I'm just like, oh, I can't do this. How do you all feel and get over that pressure, if you will, or that kind of maybe that overwhelming feeling of like
just so I can just get whatever I'm thinking out there, even if it's really dumb. Sometimes the thing that launches me into a creative spiral is just writing the same sentence over and over again until I come up with something new. Just like come up with a way for yourself to get past that roadblock of, oh, this has to be perfect. Otherwise, if no one else can see it.
Awesome, thanks for sharing. We've got Bailey back as well. Bailey, we're giving some fantastic answers to your question. I'm sorry you missed that piece of it, but God,
I'm sure everyone will be sending. So you just missed the best part of the entire webinar. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, good. I want to get to a couple of the questions that we see here in the chat. And I see we've got one that's, I'm only 9 and I'm trying to stop people from using plastic straws here. And are there opportunities for kids younger than high school? So I'll let people chat. I also want to give out a shout out. I think we've got Shelby O'Neill tuning in, who is the all things expert on plastic straws and plastic straw prevention. So please, we'd love for you guys to get connected. But anyone want to jump in for some opportunities? We can share some, I think, organizationally, but would love to hear, where those opportunities are that you guys see for kids younger than high school.
I would love to jump in and say, keep dreaming, keep going, keep feeling every day, waking up in the morning and say, like, keep growing your passion, basically, because before you know it, you'll be opening doors to incredible opportunities that you never ever thought you would ever have. And just keep aspiring to do what you really love, and never stop dreaming, basically. But I just wanted to put that in there.
I'd like to add to that as well. There's so many things that you can do when you're only 9 years old, and it may not seem like it, but there are. And it might be as simple as, something I did. I remember I was 8 years old. I helped my 3rd grade teacher start an environmental club at our elementary school. And I had like a little lemonade stand, and I gave like $12 to some nonprofit somewhere, and that counts as helping. And if you're a physically small person, if you're like young, it doesn't mean that the impact that you have is also small. You know what I mean?
That's a great point too. And I'll just add to, please again, look to organizations for resources. I think one of the cool things that I'm seeing across the environmental movement is organizations are continuing to recognize that we need younger and younger voices in this conversation and at the table and engaged. So feel free to reach out. I see Andrew in here sharing comments, great content from National Geographic and our friends on their education team. Please, there's so many great resources to check out. Again, check out our resource at EarthEcho, celebrate World Oceans Day, and check out the fantastic resources over at worldoceansday.org. So many resources out there. And again, we're here to help. So you'll see our contact information toward the end here, but any way that we can help amplify or support the fantastic work you're doing, we'd love to be part of that too.
Yeah. Find your superpower. Each of you watching has a superpower that will ultimately unlock change in some form or fashion. Find that superpower and find others to help kind of amplify and elevate what you're doing. Akila just had a brain wave moment. I was gonna say, Akila, did you have a thought?
Oh no, you just cut out.
Yeah, we
I was
lost you
like,
for a
uh-oh.
second
my
there, but now
God.
you're back.
You're back. You're back.
And I see lots of, in the meantime though, see lots of resources for Nicolina's Turtle Co. coming in, selling, raised over $2,000 selling reusable straws. Amazing, congratulations, and thank you so much for being here and sharing that story. I see a lot of people sharing some options and ways to connect here, so that's fantastic. And yes, definitely Shelby with Junior Ocean Guardians, make sure you guys connect, that would be fantastic. But love seeing the collaboration and conversations here.
Sean, do we have time for like one more question?
I'm losing track of time. Yeah, do you want to jump in with one, Bailey?
Yes, I can ask
Great
a
conversation,
question.
I know, get it.
Okay, let me find one. Now I'm like, now you're all watching me read the question. I guess this is just a quick sort of question for everybody, but what is each of yours favorite memory from like a storytelling perspective, or just favorite memory that really continues to inspire your work now, you know, during a global pandemic, but also kind of all 365 in a year?
I can go. Really just seeing people's responses to stuff I put out there, videos I put out there, and then having them contact me and be like, I'm starting to make this change in my life to try to help your cause, but not only my cause, the whole cause for the world.
Yeah.
Whether that's not using plastic bottles or not using straws or just turning off the lights when you leave a room to conserve energy. People making change because of something I made. A pretty cool feeling.
I was gonna say, I think all of us have a similar feeling. You know, we look up to so many cool environmental change makers of our globe, and you know, when people are able to tell us that back, you know, one of my favorite recent quotes that I heard is, even doing 1% is still 1%, right? 1% for our planet is still 1%. And that really does, I promise you, make a difference. It might not feel like that, but journaling and telling someone or reading a poem, that is change making. Education is change making. So I love that. That's really great, Jackson, that, you know, sharing that story of, you know, younger people kind of looking up to you, as we have all looked up to so many cool people. That's super inspiring. Anybody else?
I can jump in. So something I've been doing a lot during quarantine is gratitude journaling, and one of the prompts I've been using is look back to yourself like a couple years ago and imagine something didn't happen, or something like something we're proud of didn't happen. And one of the first things I thought of was not winning from the Bow Seats Ocean Awareness Program. And obviously winning doesn't mean anything. I guess you should still do it even if you don't know where you're going to go. But I think winning gave me so much confidence, and it really like pushed me forward into the movement. And like just seeing how lost I was in ninth grade and like graduating high school now, I think that that organization and just like kept going, and I kept going with it. So just like watching my progress and reflecting on that has really kept me going.
Yes, that's all I have to add. Just yes.
All right, anybody else have one last thought, or something that we ended the last webinar on is something that I like to kind of also ask each of you who are watching. You know, one of my favorite ways to start brainstorming is, you know, if you had the world's attention for 30 seconds, what would you say? You know, because in a lot of ways, you know, all of us watching right now is representative of a lot of parts of the world. And so opening it up to anyone on the panel, but anyone in the chat as well, if you had 30 seconds, you know, to address the entire world, what would you say? I'm putting you all on the spot. I know.
Some great thinking faces going right now. This is good.
I mentioned this during the last webinar in the comments, but it's still the same. Be kind, generous, and intentional in everything you do.
That's what I was planning on saying. I believe Ellen DeGeneres says something along those lines of be respectful, or I don't know word for word what she says, but she says it at the end of every show, and I think it's very important.
I would say, I remember Bailey did this one other time and it was really hard to figure out something on the spot, but I reckon reflect and spend some time looking within and finding what you truly want. And that may take you a really long time, but in the end, you will find something and you will just absolutely propel on the love and commitment that you have to that one thing or those things that, yeah, so look within, basically. Yeah.
I would probably say basically the same thing that Nicola did, and just that, you know, somebody out there in the world loves you. You know, there's always somebody who loves you, and it doesn't matter if it's only your mom. That's fine. But yeah, basically just, you know, you will find your purpose eventually.
That was so inspiring. I want to end on that really powerful note. Keep putting that in the chat. I'm going to share my screen if my internet decides not to hate me any longer. Just so you can get all of our contact information. Let me know if this is too much for the internet. But yeah, definitely take a picture of this, screenshot this, let us know if you have any more thoughts or questions. I really do want to thank each and every one of you. I do have one more thing after this, but I do want to thank each and every one of you for being on this panel, but for all of you watching. This is a weird time we live in, but ultimately things like this helps me at least realize that we're all in this together, and you have a change-making community right here to lean on for help, for guidance, for questions, but ultimately love and support right now, which is what a lot of us need. Please remember that, you know, we're all in this together, and I promise that 1%, right? If you are waking up every single day and doing what you can with what you have to make this planet a better place, you are a role model. You're a change maker, and you are doing so much good for our planet. So before we go, I did want to share one more cool opportunity. Earth Day was so exciting last week, and ultimately we want to keep the fun going. We want to keep community going. We want to keep change making going. So World Oceans Day is the next kind of major thing I'm looking forward to. That is June 8th for all of you who did not know when World Oceans Day is, but you won't forget it now. Check out and learn more about Youth-a-thon, 24 hours with change makers around the globe. We're really excited for this next event happening on World Oceans Day weekend. Like I said, go to @risingblue or .singblue there to learn more about the event itself. I hope to see you all at the next webinar. Sean, anything else I'm not saying?
No, I just want to echo your comments. Thank you all so much for joining. This was such a fantastic conversation. And I think to build on Bailey's comments about, you know, we're all in this together is, you know, when it comes to storytelling, this is really one shared story of our planet that we all share and that we're all part of. And I'm so excited to see how you'll take the tips and the lessons and the experiences from this conversation and the networking that I already see happening in the chat and on this call, and continue to build that story and tell that story together in a way that motivates more people to join in this movement and join in this work that obviously you all are so passionate about. So thank you for what you're doing, and thank you so much for having us and being part of this. We're excited to continue the conversation.
Yay. Awesome. We'll have beautiful days, beautiful nights, and we're all going to talk again soon. Bye.
Have a good one, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.